As I scanned the restaurant for the client I was scheduled to meet, I caught sight of my ex-wife, Olivia, sitting with a slightly chubby middle-aged man. It was clear he had once been fit, but time and indulgence had taken their toll. Olivia looked content beside him. Everything about the man screamed affluence. Standing in the foyer, a flood of memories hit me. Even though 3 years had passed since our divorce, the feelings felt as fresh as if it were yesterday. This was where I found myself now, watching from a distance instead of being at her side. However, as events unfolded, her desires were fulfilled. My troubles began with a trip to Albany for a client meeting. I decided to stay overnight to avoid a long drive back. But just an hour into my journey, the client called to say he'd had a fender bender, though he was fine. He apologized for the late cancellation and expressed regret. I reassured him it was no trouble and suggested we reschedule. Despite my best efforts to stay positive, I dreaded the extra 2 hours of driving ahead. I had planned a surprise romantic dinner for my wife, and 90 minutes later, I finally turned onto my street. The first thing I noticed was 3 unfamiliar cars parked in the driveway. Knowing Olivia often hosted friends when I was away, I didn't think much of it. I parked on the street and walked into the house, expecting everything to be normal. But then, I saw 4 sets of clothes scattered across the living room floor. My heart sank as I realized something was terribly wrong. My wife's passionate cries weren't pleas for help, they were familiar demands for more intense lovemaking. The crushing truth dawned on me: my wife was in the middle of an affair. Steeling myself, I headed upstairs to confront the reality. At the top of the stairs, I heard Olivia emitting a primal scream. Peering around the bedroom doorframe, I saw 3 men. I didn't know the other 2, but the third was unmistakably her boss, Adam Cooper. To my horror, they were all engaged in intimate acts with Olivia. My disgust for Adam deepened as he lavished praise on her, thanking her for her help with his business clients. It sickened me to think that this jerk was exploiting my wife for his professional advantage. The 3 of them treated her like an object of pleasure, using degrading language and asserting their dominance over her. Seeing her like this, so different from the woman I'd known during our 10 years of marriage, made me understand why Adam had chosen such a derogatory term for her. Quietly, I retreated downstairs, seeking refuge in my office. I grabbed my digital video camera, which still had some battery left. With an old holiday tape in it and enough space to record, I set up the camera at the bedroom door, determined to capture evidence of my wife's betrayal for legal purposes, not to create some illicit spectacle. I recorded her face and the others involved, but could only endure about 5 to 10 minutes before my emotions overwhelmed me. While some might find such scenes stimulating, for me, it was nothing but sadness and deep betrayal. Feeling utterly defeated, I retreated downstairs to clear my head. In my office, I retrieved my weapon from the safe and removed the safety, even though I wasn't inclined toward violence. Still, I felt the need to be prepared if things escalated. Heading into the living room, I confiscated the car keys and wallets from the pants left on the floor, then deflated the tires of all the cars parked outside, including Olivia's. As I went back inside, a dark grin spread across my face as I formulated a plan. I was sure it would work if Olivia took her cell phone. I'd seen it on the bedside table while recording, so I readied my camera, positioned myself quietly behind the stairs, and dialed her number. After several missed calls, she finally answered. The silence in the house told me she had told the others to stay quiet. "Hey Sam, how's Albany?" she asked, breathless. I could hear the faint laughter of the men in the background. "You sound winded. Are you okay?" I feigned concern. "Yes, had to rush upstairs for a call," she replied, trying to compose herself. "My client canceled, so I'll be home soon." "Want to have dinner?" I asked calmly, though I was seething inside. "Heading home now?" she asked nervously. "Sounds good. Just need to get ready, babe." "See you soon," she hurriedly responded before hanging up, leaving me with a grim smile, knowing what was about to unfold. As expected, the 4 completely undressed individuals began to come down the stairs into the living room. The men quickly dressed, and Olivia hastily put herself together. They all rushed out, with Olivia slipping on her shoes and jacket, glancing outside, hoping they'd leave before she did. If she hadn't been so caught up in the moment, she might have noticed my car parked on the street. The men all began shouting at Olivia at the same time, prompting her to step onto the porch to listen. Seizing the moment, I slammed the front door shut and locked it behind her. Olivia caught a glimpse of my face as I closed the door and tried to communicate through the side window, her voice pleading. The time for discussion had passed. The men pounded on the front door and attempted to talk to her through the side window, clearly wanting their belongings back. Realizing what was happening, I dialed emergency services to report an attempted break-in. The dispatcher told me that a neighbor had already called. I gave my name and address and waited for the police, who arrived promptly within 2 minutes. After questioning Olivia, I approached the 2 officers and told them that the men had mistreated my wife, demanding their arrest. The men reacted immediately, shouting that they had been invited and that she had consented, denying any allegations of mistreatment. Everyone turned to Olivia, waiting for her response. She avoided eye contact and, with a voice full of shame, admitted that she had invited the men into the house, engaged in intimate activities with them, and wasn't mistreated. She had acted of her own accord. The men seemed relieved to dodge the mistreatment charges. Soon, 2 more police cars arrived, and the officers recorded everyone's names for their report. The senior officer then turned to me and said that, since Olivia had invited these men and they were all over 18, there wasn't much legal recourse. He suggested counseling or similar support, casting a disdainful glance at my wife as he spoke. I instructed the police to call a taxi for Olivia and told them to inform her that she would not be allowed back into the house. That evening, one of the men called a taxi after discovering their flat tires. They also tried to accuse me of stealing their belongings, but I refuted their claims to the police. I then walked back to the porch, where Olivia remained with the men until the taxi arrived. I stood on the porch, my anger barely contained. Despite my fury, Olivia bravely approached me, unaware of the rage I felt and the firearm I carried. She might have fled had she known. "Sam, I'm deeply sorry," she began to speak, but I cut her off swiftly. "You've shattered my heart, and I'll never forgive you. Adam called you a strumpet, and honestly, I think it fits. From now on, I'll refer to you as such and never use your real name again. If you need to communicate with me, do it through Paul." With those final words, I retreated into the house and locked the door behind me, leaving her outside. She rushed back to the group in tears, and Adam moved to console her, but she pushed him away, which oddly brought me some small comfort. However, my brief satisfaction soon faded. Back in my bedroom, the lingering smell of lovemaking drove me into a rage. I tore the room apart, throwing the mattress onto the front lawn. I grabbed my toolbox from the garage and dismantled the bed, tossing the pieces outside along with the mattress. Returning to the bedroom, I snatched Olivia's cell phone from the floor and scrolled through her contacts and messages. It didn't take long to find disgusting emails, photos, and even videos of men I didn't recognize, all engaged in intimate acts with her. It was clear from the images that she knew them. I bitterly laughed at my former attentiveness to her, realizing those days were gone forever. I moved all the boxes from our bedroom downstairs and piled their contents on the front lawn. I then began clearing out the guest room and stumbled upon an unexpected find. While moving each drawer outside as I had with the bedroom items, the last bottom drawer was particularly resistant. Fueled by anger, I yanked it forcefully, hearing a crack. With some effort, the drawer finally opened, revealing its contents, 7 or 8 DVDs hidden inside. I accidentally cracked one of the plastic cases, but fortunately, the disc itself was intact. My heart sank further as I examined the DVDs. I didn't think I could feel any worse, but I did. As I descended the stairs and scrutinized the disc titles, my distress only deepened. In the living room, I arranged everything on shelves for closer inspection. The first disc showed Olivia with her close friend Grace at Grace's place. Olivia often helped out at Grace's gatherings in Avon, usually held on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It seemed they had engaged in intimate activities with various individuals at her house. As I reviewed the footage over several hours, tears started to well up, but they only stopped when I reached the final 2 discs. The first disc showed Olivia with her tennis instructor, a service I had funded. She had attended lessons every Saturday and returned home too exhausted for intimacy later that evening, which now made sense. The second disc revealed Olivia engaging in intimate encounters at her workplace, specifically in the boardroom with Adam, her boss, and Adam's superior, Mark Johnson. Mark was a prominent figure in the community, frequently featured in the newspaper for his charitable work, which, as I now saw, extended into my wife's personal life. I retrieved a large envelope and carefully placed inside it Olivia's cell phone, the discs, and a cassette tape I had recorded earlier. My plan was to give the entire envelope to my lawyer and close friend, Paul Turner, who was one of the only 2 people I truly trusted. Nothing else mattered at that moment. As I glanced at Olivia's computer on the desk, I powered it up and began copying every file, email, photo, and video onto external drives. It took about an hour to complete the transfer, after which I settled down to go through my wife's digital archives. Among the videos were scenes similar to those found on the discs. Additionally, I stumbled upon explicit images typically associated with adult websites. Digging deeper, I found a treasure trove of emails spanning about 6 months. Despite her attempts to hide them under misleading file names, I uncovered correspondence between her, Adam, and several other men, as well as exchanges with Grace. Just last week, I had brushed off their significance until one email almost destroyed me. The thought of using my weapon crossed my mind, but I realized it wasn't worth it. I needed to stay strong. The only email that hit me this hard was one Olivia had sent to Grace. In it, Grace questioned why Olivia hadn't left me to be single again and asked her to describe her ideal future husband. Here's how Olivia responded: Grace, I have no interest in him anymore. Sam is faithful but foolish. I'm afraid he'll soon uncover my secret lifestyle. He's not completely clueless, but love blinds him. Lately, he's been gaining weight, and his growing belly is unattractive. Compared to other men, he falls short. I also detest beards and mustaches. They make him look repulsive. I once loved him deeply, but the excitement of recent years is too tempting to give up. His lawyer best friend might cause problems if he gets involved. Adam and Mark at work hint at promotions and perks with suggestive undertones, which makes me laugh. I also want a house and a car. If I play my cards right, I could secure monthly alimony. Plus, I'm looking forward to our Tuesday party, provided I recover from my tennis injury. Eric is impressive. Make sure I get last Thursday's video. It was my first time with so many men at once. My dream man needs to be wealthy, loyal, compliant, and not too bright. He must cater to my every whim and still ask which one. I laugh. I'm indifferent about the bedroom as long as there's money involved. I laugh again. I can fulfill my needs elsewhere. Sometimes it feels too easy. Damn, Sam's home now. Gotta go. See you on Tuesday. Call me Olivia. I read this letter over and over, its words revolting and the past few years deeply hurting me. Did she truly feel this way about me? Was my love so blind that she could betray me for over 2 years? Afterward, I retired to the sofa and fell asleep. The next morning, plagued by restless sleep, I called in sick to work and reached out to my close friend and lawyer, Paul Turner. Emma, Paul's secretary, answered the phone. I had known her nearly as long as Paul. I urgently requested a meeting, but she told me Paul would be tied up in court all day. Emma, tell Paul the first need to see him in his office in an hour. If he starts giving you trouble, mention Nancy Carter's name. That'll get his attention. See you in an hour. I said before ending the call. As I began getting dressed, my phone rang. Hesitant to speak with Olivia, I checked the caller ID and saw it was an unknown number. I answered, suspecting it might be Paul returning my call. "Hello, Mr. Parker, this is Mark Johnson from Olivia's office. If possible, I'd like to discuss last night's events at your house. Could we meet today in my office to clarify the situation for everyone involved?" I wasn't sure if he knew about the video footage of him with my wife at his workplace, but I knew he was likely worried about keeping Adam Cooper's key clients. Olivia and Adam were valuable to him, and he probably didn't want to lose them. Moreover, he was surely concerned about the negative publicity for his company and himself. "Mr. Johnson, I have an important meeting this morning, but I'll call you back on this number before noon to arrange something for today," I assured him calmly. That I approached the office with the expectation of a confrontation. As soon as I stepped outside, I was met with a scene that resembled a bizarre yard sale. The broken bed and Olivia's clothes were still scattered around, and an elderly neighbor waved at me with a puzzled look. I knew I'd become the talk of the neighborhood, just like they cover such sensational stories in the city. I grabbed a quick bite before heading straight to Paul's office. Emma, Paul's secretary, greeted me and brewed a cup of coffee with lots of cream but no sugar. We had a long history together. "Holy crap, Sam," she said, "I don't know what you've got on Paul, but when I mentioned his name, he told me to clear his schedule for today." "I could use a month off," she joked. "If you want to know who Nancy Carter is, you'll have to ask Paul," she added with a smirk. "By the way, where is he?" I asked. "He said he'd be here right away." "He needed to reschedule his meeting with the judge for today's court hearing," Emma informed me. Just then, Paul walked in. "Holy crap, Sam. Nancy Carter? You must be in serious trouble for bringing her up. Come into the office and let's talk." "Emma, don't patch me through to anyone right now," Paul quickly instructed. That I took my coffee and followed him into his office, where he closed the door behind us for privacy. I recounted the events of the previous evening and shared the shocking details about Olivia's new lifestyle. I handed Paul the envelope containing the evidence I had gathered, and he began to speak. Paul listened intently, processing the information without interrupting. I could see him mentally assembling the legal strategy as he absorbed the details. I also told him about Mark Johnson's request for a meeting that day. "Well, Sam, let's prioritize," Paul said. "I've known you for a long time, and I can see you're devastated. Is there any chance for reconciliation with Olivia?" "Paul," I responded firmly, "if it were Katie, your wife, and you found those videos and emails, you'd be out the door in a heartbeat. I want a divorce, but I also want to make them pay. I'm not going to quietly accept this betrayal." "Okay," Paul said. "First, we'll sue Eric and the tennis club. Grace is out of the picture since she's just a friend. Olivia's workplace, though, is a different matter. Second, we'll go after the 2 clients and their companies who were at your house. We'll also target Adam Cooper, Mark Johnson, and their associates." Paul warned me that things might get worse before they get better, but I was beyond caring. "Even if I have to resort to physical confrontation, I'm making these people pay for what they've done through Olivia," I asserted with anger. "All right, Sam," Paul said, "recap what Mark Johnson wanted, and we'll proceed from there." Paul outlined several options, and I favored the direct attack on Olivia's workplace. I had leverage with the video evidence of Cooper, Johnson, and Olivia in their boardroom. Paul noted that, as Olivia's superiors, they had considerable influence over her position, which could result in serious legal repercussions. That I liked the sound of that. Paul hinted that once Mark Johnson saw the evidence, he might be inclined to offer a settlement. "If it's less than $2 million, he can forget it," I said firmly. "Actually, make it $2.5 million. I've seen your legal bills before," I joked. "Come over tonight at 7 p.m. Katie will whip up a fantastic dinner for us." "You could use a break from home," I insisted. I promptly scheduled an appointment with Mark Johnson for 2 p.m. Emma peeked into the office. "Paul, they're calling you online." "One," she said. "Emma, I told you no calls, Paul snapped, visibly annoyed. Sorry, Paul, but this is Olivia. She wants to talk to you, and I thought you might want to take the call, Emma persisted. Sorry, Emma. It's going to be a long day, and it's just starting. Does she know Sam is here? Paul asked. Not that I know of, Emma replied. Tell her I'll talk to her in a minute, Paul said more calmly as Emma exited to the reception area. I bet she's already discovered that her cell phone, computer, and all her DVDs are missing. She's probably furious that I dumped all her belongings on the front lawn along with our bed, I informed Paul. Wow, you really had a busy evening, Paul said. Let me handle this conversation. Please don't intervene. As your lawyer, I need to clarify a few things right now, he said, connecting the call that I started to overhear a one-sided conversation but could almost make out what Olivia was saying to Paul. Hi Olivia, this is Paul. Yes, I've already spoken to him. Sam is a stand-up guy and my friend. I thought you'd have his back instead of betraying him. No excuses, Olivia. I'm not in the mood. Yes, I'll represent him. He has strong arguments. You know this won't be pleasant, right? I'll talk to him. But you've shattered a man who was always faithful and deeply loved you. I doubt he cares about your opinion. My advice is to get yourself a good lawyer. You'll need one. Yes, Mark Johnson scheduled an appointment for 2 p.m., though I don't think you should attend. Listen to me, Olivia, if you even attempt to eavesdrop outside the office door, I'll advise Sam to leave, and things will escalate, Paul said sternly. It's better to wait and keep yourself composed today. I know he put your belongings out on the lawn, but just as you can invite strangers into your bedroom, he can remove your possessions from the house. Frankly, I'm surprised he didn't resort to violence last night. Yes, he was armed, but it was for self-defense. He believed you were in danger of assault, and it's all in the police report. I can't say for certain, but if it were my Katie, I'd probably be in custody right now. Sam acted out of anger given the circumstances, Paul continued, regarding your computer, cell phone, and any other missing items, you'll need to speak to the co-owner of the house. Perhaps he left them on the lawn along with your clothes, and someone took them. I've handled all the escrow paperwork for the house, and you both have equal rights. How you exercise these rights is up to each of you, he then addressed Olivia directly, warning her to stay put and let Sam remain in the house until things were resolved. He advised her not to push it, and with a hint of frustration, he said, I'm tempted to punch you in the nose myself. Stay with Grace and get a lawyer. I'll be in touch, and I expect your lawyer to contact me once you've retained one. Paul's tone was resolute and unyielding. His personal connection to me, as a friend and lawyer, made his stance clear. Olivia's tears wouldn't sway him. Paul glanced up at me, his expression tinged with sadness. Did you catch most of that conversation? I did, I admitted. I want to confront her face to face and tell her exactly how I feel. But I don't think I can bear the pain of seeing her again, not just yet. Paul's demeanor shifted to one of positivity and optimism. I have a couple of requests for you, Sam, he said. First, hand me those tapes. I retrieved the videotapes from the envelope, those from the previous night, featuring Eric at the tennis club, and the footage of Olivia with Mr. Cooper and Mr. Johnson in her office. After handing them over, Paul instructed me to invite Emma to join me for lunch. I looked at him puzzled, but he responded, I think it's best if I review them myself to spare you any further distress before our meeting at 2 p.m. I don't want you upset before our meeting with Mark Johnson. I acknowledged his wisdom and thanked him. Sharing the good news with Emma, she joked, if Paul's footing the bill, you'd better take me to an upscale restaurant. We both chuckled as we left the office. Emma proved to be an excellent dining companion. For the next hour, she helped me momentarily forget my troubles. Upon our return to the office, we heard Paul cheering as we walked in. He was in high spirits, doing a little victory dance at his desk. These recordings are a game changer, Sam. I can't believe it, he exclaimed. My expression turned bittersweet, and Paul finally grasped why. Oh, Sam, I'm truly sorry I didn't fully appreciate the significance of these videos earlier. I know Olivia's actions have deeply hurt you. I was just excited about what I uncovered, he said sincerely. Paul, come over here. I need you to see something, he said, beckoning me to his desk. I positioned myself behind him as he brought up a video on his screen. Did you watch the entire video Eric shot at the tennis club with Olivia? No, I replied honestly. I only managed to skim through some of it last night. It was tough to stomach without feeling the urge to lash out. Well, brace yourself, Paul warned. Towards the end, just after Eric and Olivia finish, they attract a small crowd in the men's locker room. I hate to say it, but she let the other men who were watching join in after Eric. Paul played the video, pointing out an older man with long gray hair and a walrus-like mustache. Do you recognize this guy? He asked. The video showed the man discarding a towel to reveal a substantial package. He then went straight to Olivia, engaging with her, and shortly after, she was surrounded by 5 more men waiting their turn. I don't know who this guy is, but I assume you do, I said, trying to keep my composure. Sam, this is ammunition for our meeting today at the tennis club at 16 Nasi, Paul said with palpable excitement as he explained his strategy. I grinned, relieved to have Paul, both my friend and an exceptional lawyer, on my side. His plan was taking shape, and I felt a renewed sense of hope that justice would be served. We departed Paul's office for downtown, armed with a portable DVD player, printed photographs, and legal envelopes. Upon arrival at Olivia's building, we made our way to Mark Johnson's office on the top floor, with Olivia's office located 1 floor below. After a brief wait in the reception area, we were ushered into Mr. Johnson's lavishly furnished office. As we approached, I caught a glimpse of someone observing us from the hallway. I turned and saw a woman before she disappeared around the corner. I hoped it wasn't Olivia, but I felt relieved not to confront her today. Mark Johnson's office was adorned with opulent furniture, plaques, awards, and photos of him with various notable figures. I wondered if Olivia had ever been here, and my disdain for Mr. Johnson grew even stronger. I introduced Paul and took the lead in the conversation. Hello, Mr. Johnson. This is my friend Paul Turner, and he'll be joining us for the meeting you scheduled today, I said firmly as we shook hands. Mr. Parker, Sam, I thought this was meant to be a private meeting between you and me, Mark Johnson inquired. Well, I decided to bring Paul along. Anything you have to say to me, you can say to him as well, I stated, leaving no room for discussion. Demar. Johnson begrudgingly accepted Paul's presence and addressed his remarks solely to me, which brought a smile to Paul's face. I knew what was coming, but I let Mr. Johnson speak first. Sam, may I call you Sam? Mark began. Absolutely no issues. In fact, I thought it might be beneficial to have Adam Cooper present at this meeting too. I'm not sure if it's feasible, but it concerns him as well, I said. After a brief pause, Mark pressed the intercom button. Chloe, inform Adam that I require his presence in my office immediately. Tell him to drop everything and come here right away. Chloe's response was quick. Understood. Adam will be here shortly. In the meantime, Mark tried to ease the tension. I want to express my sincere apologies for the trouble caused by Adam and Olivia in your life. I know last night must have been awful, but if we collaborate, we might be able to find a solution beneficial to all parties. What exactly do you mean, Mr. Johnson? I inquired, waiting for Adam's arrival. Mark started to speak. I genuinely care for your wife, Olivia, but was interrupted by Adam's entrance. Adam hesitated momentarily, looking as if he might leave, but Mark instructed him to sit. Adam complied reluctantly, avoiding eye contact with me. Sam, I wanted to convey that I have great affection for Olivia, almost like a daughter, Mark continued, but Paul interjected sharply. Are you implying you have a penchant for incest, Mr. Johnson? Paul asked, catching Mark off guard. I couldn't help but chuckle at Paul's remark, understanding its intent. Mark's face flushed with indignation. What? What are you suggesting? Do I have a fondness for incest? What on earth does that mean? Well, allow me to illustrate, Paul said, placing the DVD player on Mark's desk. A picture is worth 1,000 words, He handed screenshots from the video to Adam, who stared at them in disbelief before passing them to Mark. The images left no room for doubt about the identities or actions of those involved. I suspected Mark might even recognize his own boardroom table from the footage. Adam, are you seriously telling me you recorded this and distributed copies? Mark asked, looking incredulous. Adam, completely dumbfounded, remained silent. Well, Mr. Johnson, here's how it's going to unfold, Paul said, clearly relishing the moment. Oh, and just to clarify, I'm Sam's attorney as well as his friend. Let me outline what we expect and how we expect you to address it. Firstly, Olivia retains her position without question. Sam believes she'll require employment, and she seems to fit in quite well with everyone here, Paul stated, directing this to Mark with a subtle wink. Secondly, Mr. Cooper is no longer part of the equation here. Olivia stays, and he exits, Paul declared, gesturing towards the flabbergasted Adam. Thirdly, we expect you to present us with a monetary offer that respects our intelligence. We'll entertain your initial proposal and provide a yes or no response within 5 business days. We anticipate taking legal action within 2 months, possibly sooner if necessary. Before they could respond, Paul initiated the video playback, swiveling the screen for Mark's viewing. The footage showed Mark and Adam engaging in carnal acts with my wife in their boardroom. Adam, having been involved in the recording, didn't need to watch. The room was silent, the gravity of the situation sinking in as the video played on. Paul's strategy was clear, and it was now up to Mark Johnson to respond. Mark Johnson sat at his desk, his mouth agape, unable to tear his eyes from the screen. The footage played out before him, undeniable and damning. I could almost hear his thoughts, scrambling to figure out how to salvage his business, reputation, family, and, most importantly, his finances. It was clear that action would be imminent. Next to him, Adam remained silent, his face pale and full of dread. Mark, always the pragmatist, leaned back in his chair and addressed him. Adam, after these gentlemen leave today, we'll need to have a serious conversation about your future here. I'll speak with legal and arrange a settlement that makes this somewhat manageable, he said, more to himself than to anyone else. Then, as if realizing the potential for disaster, he added, you both know what this could mean if word got out. Paul didn't let him finish. Relax, Mr. Johnson. We're not looking to blow this up, yet. That depends on how serious your offer is. But you might want to reconsider firing Adam too hastily. He might have more copies of this tape, which could give him leverage over you. Mark flinched at the suggestion, while Adam sat stiff, like a man being led to the gallows. Paul wasn't finished. Just so you're aware, Paul continued coolly, there could be legal consequences for both of you. Relationships with an employee, especially in your positions, aren't something you'll want publicized. As Paul and I stood to leave, he gathered the DVD player and the photos we'd shown them. We walked out in silence, leaving Mark and Adam to their mess. I had no doubt they were about to have a very uncomfortable conversation. As we stepped into the hall, I spotted a familiar figure lurking around the corner, trying to be inconspicuous. Olivia. I hadn't seen her earlier, but Paul must have. I smirked. Just before the door closed behind us, I heard Mark's voice bark over the intercom, get Olivia Parker in here immediately. I grinned, knowing she was about to face the fire. It wouldn't be long before Mark realized where I found the DVD of their affair. The thought alone gave me a grim satisfaction. Once outside, I turned to Paul, my curiosity piqued. Why did you give Adam that escape route? Telling him he could use his own video against Mark, Paul smirked and shrugged. Divide and conquer. It's better if they aren't united against us. If they're each looking out for themselves, it gives us an edge. Mark will know that if he lowballs us, Adam might turn against him. Besides, he added, both of these guys have families, kids, and reputations. They won't want this getting out any more than we do. I glanced back at the building one last time. What used to be a place of pride for my wife was now the symbol of her betrayal. A bitter taste settled in my mouth as we walked to the car. Let's grab a beer before the 4 p.m. meeting, Paul said, breaking the silence. We both need one, and there's something I need to talk to you about. We drove across town to a small bar near the tennis club. The place was quiet, perfect for what I knew would be an important conversation. Paul ordered 2 beers, took a sip, and then looked at me intently. Sam, I think Mark Johnson will make an offer. But it'll be low, probably just under $1 million. His legal team is sharp, and he's not an idiot. Tomorrow, I'll let him know we won't accept anything that doesn't meet our expectations. I'm thinking $3 million, or we'll walk. I nodded, but Paul wasn't finished. He hesitated for a moment before speaking again. There's something else, Sam. If Mark's offer isn't good enough, I need to know if I have your permission to be ruthless. I won't hold back if we take this to court. That means I'll use anything and everything. Things about Olivia, about your marriage, maybe even things you wouldn't want public. It could get ugly. I had been expecting this. It had crossed my mind more than once, the possibility of everything being dragged out into the open. I stared into my beer before replying. I've thought about it, Paul. If it comes to that, we'll do what we have to do. But I'd prefer to see what Mark offers first. Paul nodded, understanding. Good. Because if they come back with a joke of an offer, I'll pull no punches. I've got contacts at 3 local news stations, and they'll be more than happy to air footage or images from the tapes, even if they have to censor them. I smiled at Paul's confidence. You've always been there for me, Paul. I trust you. I just wish none of this had happened. Being in the dark about Olivia's affair was a lot easier than living with this humiliation. Paul raised his glass. We'll get through it, Sam. We clinked glasses, and after a long drink, Paul shifted the conversation. Now, let's talk about our next move. This 4 p.m. meeting at the tennis club, Mr. Jack Morgan is the owner, and he's got some information we might need. As we finished our beers and prepared to head to the tennis club, I couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning. Between the meetings, the videos, and the leverage we now had, things were starting to move in our favor. The showdown with Mark Johnson and Adam Cooper wasn't over yet, and the 4 p.m. meeting was going to be another step toward finally bringing this mess to a close. The road ahead was uncertain, but with Paul by my side and a strategy in place, I felt ready for whatever came next. We were determined to see this through to the end. The air was thick with tension as Paul and I arrived at the Ace Tennis Club. Jack Morgan, the club's owner, was waiting for us, though the hostility between him and Paul was palpable. From the moment we stepped into his office, it was clear this wasn't going to be a civil conversation. Mr. Morgan, this is Sam Parker, Paul introduced, nodding in my direction. His wife is a member of your club, and it's come to our attention that Eric Ford, your tennis instructor, was involved in an affair with Mrs. Parker. We're here to find out what you plan to do about it. I watched Morgan closely, expecting some level of contrition or at least surprise. But instead, he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and stared at me with a smirk that sent my blood boiling. Listen, Jack started, his voice dripping with indifference. What 2 consenting adults do behind closed doors is none of my business. And if you, Mr. Parker, can't keep your wife satisfied, don't come crying to me when she strays. He gave me a mocking wink. There are plenty of unhappy spouses around here who come for a little personalized attention from my staff. I clenched my fists, anger surging through me, ready to let loose on him. But Paul put a hand on my arm, stopping me just in time. He was calm, collected, and in control. Qualities I struggled to hold on to in that moment. Jack, Paul said, his voice sharp, you're assuming this all happened off club grounds, with your ignorance giving you plausible deniability. Let's correct that assumption. He placed a portable DVD player on the desk, hit play, and pointed the screen at Jack. The smug expression on Morgan's face evaporated as the footage rolled, showing Eric Ford and Olivia in the club's locker room. The color drained from his face, but before he could speak, Paul continued. Jack, you and your staff knew about this, Paul said, his voice low but clear. You allowed it to happen, maybe even encouraged it. And Mrs. Parker, who paid dues through her husband, is now a dissatisfied customer. Think about how your other paying members, especially the married ones, will feel when this goes public. Jack opened his mouth, but Paul wasn't done. I'll subpoena everyone present that day in the locker room. And there's the issue of privacy, filming in the locker room without consent. Once this gets out, your club's reputation will be finished. As will your bank account. Morgan sat there, frozen, contemplating the potential fallout. I could see the wheels turning in his head, weighing whether to fight us or settle. Paul's words had hit their mark, and Jack knew it. So, here's what we want, Paul said, leaning forward slightly. A substantial offer, and action on your part to remedy this. You give us that, and we'll save you a lot of headaches and financial losses down the line. Jack looked from me to Paul, his lips pressed together in a thin line. Finally, he broke the silence. Paul, you're a real piece of work. But I can't argue with your logic, he sighed, defeated. I'll get you an offer by tomorrow. Eric's gone. And I want all copies of the tapes, gone too. If that's all, get the hell out of my office, Paul smirked, grabbing the DVD player and standing up. Oh, and give my regards to Tito Martinez, he said casually before we left the room. Go to hell, Worth, Jack spat, his face flushed with anger. Paul chuckled as we walked back to the parking lot, satisfied with how things had gone. That was easier than I expected, he said, grinning. Now, we wait for his offer. By the end of the week, Mark Johnson had caved. He offered $2.7 million to keep Olivia on as an employee and try to sweep everything under the rug. Adam Cooper, who foolishly handed over all the tapes to Mark, found himself out of a job almost immediately after. Mark wasted no time in cutting him loose, leaving Adam with no leverage, no job, and no allies. But I wasn't done. I went after the two other men who had been with my wife that night, Adam's clients. Both of them wanted to avoid any publicity, for themselves and their companies. Each paid me $1 million to keep their names out of it. Jack Morgan, however, refused to negotiate any further. He thought he could call our bluff. So, we took him to court. By the time we were finished, Morgan lost not only the case but also his club. The judge wasn't impressed with the footage from the locker room, nor with the blatant disregard for privacy or the infidelity involved. Morgan ended up paying us $3 million, and his club saw a mass exodus of members. He was forced to sell the place just to cover his losses. That he had underestimated us, underestimated me. In the end, I didn't just expose the truth, I took down everyone who had wronged me along the way. But even as the dust began to settle, a bitter truth remained. No amount of money or victory could undo what had been done. I had won, but it didn't feel like a victory. And as I drove away from Paul's house after a quiet, homemade dinner, I couldn't shake the lingering weight of betrayal. That I had sought justice, and I got it. But there was no going back to the life I had before. That I granted Olivia the house and car she desired, dodging any obligation to pay child support. We only crossed paths twice in court, and each time, I greeted her with the term, strumpet. It stung her deeply. She cried both times, but I couldn't understand why she was weeping now, after all the damage she'd already done to my life. The pain of that year still haunted me, though I had amassed more wealth than I ever imagined, thanks to Paul's sharp legal advice. That I was lost in thought, reliving the trials of that year, when the restaurant manager's voice broke through. Sir, is everything all right? He asked, concerned. I blinked, realizing I'd been standing there, staring into space, for who knows how long. Yeah, sorry, just thinking about something, I muttered, shaking my head to clear it. I caught a curious glance from the manager, the kind people give when they see someone lost in old memories. I straightened up and headed directly for my ex-wife's table. Olivia's face betrayed shock the moment she saw me. The last time she'd seen me, I was overweight with long hair and a beard, nursing a knee injury that I'd let become my excuse for letting myself go. Back then, I was complacent, comfortable in my routine with her. Now, I was trim, the knee fixed, my hair short, and my clothes upscale, thanks to the money I'd gotten from Mark Johnson and Adam Cooper. I made sure I looked like a different man, one she barely recognized. You look fantastic today, strumpet. Almost forgot how stunning you can be, I said with a smirk, knowing it would provoke her. I enjoyed watching the flicker of irritation cross her face. My name is Olivia, Sam, she retorted, her voice tight. Why can't you just call me by my name? I leaned in, my eyes locked on hers. I didn't come up with the title, you know who did. But it fits. 3 years ago, I told you that you broke my heart, and I'll never forget it. Strumpet it is. Before she could respond, the man sitting beside her stood up, his face tight with anger. He looked like he was ready to escalate things, but Olivia placed a hand on his arm, urging him to sit back down. Her makeup began to run as tears welled in her eyes. Her boyfriend, James, I assumed, spoke up in her defense. Go freshen up, Olivia, and fix your face. I'll handle this idiot for you. She stood, her eyes meeting mine once more, and for a split second, I thought I saw something deeper there. Pain, maybe guilt, maybe both. She wiped her tears, and as she walked away, I noticed the large engagement ring on her finger. It didn't matter anymore. I was beyond caring. You must be Sam Parker, Olivia's ex-husband, James said with a sneer that I smirked, recognizing the disdain. And you must be the new man she's been dreaming of. I'm her CFO, and I'd suggest you drop that nickname if you know what's good for you, he warned, though he clearly didn't want to make a scene that I held up my hands in mock surrender. Relax, I'm not here to fight. I have 3 questions, and after that, I'll disappear from your life forever. He raised an eyebrow, unsure where this was going but intrigued enough to listen. First, I began, does Grace still host her Avon gatherings on Tuesdays and Thursdays? James looked confused for a second, then replied sharply, Olivia helps her with decor sales on Mondays and Wednesdays. Looks like your memory's faulty, okay. Does Olivia still take tennis lessons on Saturdays? She plays on Sundays, he snapped, looking more impatient than I nodded, already knowing the answer before I even asked. Last question, have you ever checked under the bottom drawer of the dresser in your living room? James blinked, caught off guard. Why would I do that? I leaned in a little closer, lowering my voice. Because those 3 questions are why we're not together anymore. I've got all the leftover divorce paperwork in my office, including emails from Grace, some from another woman, and hours of videotapes. I've been carrying them around for 3 years. I thought you might want them. I pulled a folded piece of paper from my wallet. This is a letter the other woman sent to Grace about how to get rid of me before I found out about their affair. I realized after reading it that I didn't know Olivia at all. But here's the thing, this all revolves around you now. James hesitated before reaching for the paper. His curiosity seemed to win over his pride. He unfolded the letter and read it slowly. As he did, I watched his expression shift from confusion to something far more unsettled. I've kept that email with me for 3 years, I continued, not because I needed it, but as a reminder to never let someone betray me like that again. It's the same email I mentioned earlier, the one that broke me. James finished reading and quickly grabbed a pen. Without another word, he scribbled something on the paper, stood up, and walked out of the restaurant. No goodbyes, no confrontation. Just gone that I leaned over and read the note he had left on the paper. I'll return home shortly. Please wait here, and I'll call you in 15 minutes. I need to check under the bottom drawer of the living room dresser. Be right back. James, I smiled grimly, realizing I'd hit too close to home. He probably hadn't expected the truth to be so raw, so real. Something about those 3 questions had struck a nerve, and I had a feeling he was going to find exactly what I suspected he would under the drawer that I left a note of my own on Olivia's table before leaving. There was no point staying any longer. I glanced back once as I reached the foyer, catching a glimpse of Olivia returning to the table. She picked up the old email and James's note, her face going pale as she read both. Her tears started again, this time harder, until her sobs filled the restaurant. Everyone turned to look. Part of me felt a twinge of pity, but most of me was numb to it all. This was the last time I would ever see her. As I walked out of that restaurant, I couldn't help but wonder what James had found under the dresser. Olivia's reaction told me everything I needed to know. She still hadn't changed.